Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We're going to give everybody a couple more minutes to join and then just get started at 2 past the hour. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining Zenput at our Conquering the Last Mile in Restaurant Operations webinar. We're excited today to be joined by Zenput's CEO, Vladik Rikhter, who will be moderating the conversation with Cowabunga Pizza's VP of Operations, Jay Gaines. So with that, Vlad, you can take it away.
I'm sorry, I just realized I was on mute the whole time. Sorry about that. We'll start back over. First off, thanks for everyone for joining. Glad to have you on board to walk through this. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I'll give you kind of a quick intro on myself, Jay, and then we'll dig into a little bit of background on Zenput for those of you who've not heard of us, and dig into the actual presentation itself. As Cassie so generously said, I am one of the two founders and the CEO of the company. Zenput is a little close to 6 years old at this point. Actually, originally from Atlanta, so probably eaten at a handful of the Cowabunga locations in the greater Atlanta area. And Jay Gaines has joined us. Jay is the Vice President of Operations for all of Team Cowabunga's Domino's locations. And since 1990, he's provided supervision for both the corporate and individual franchise stores. He's himself from Plainfield, Indiana. Jay, say hello.
Hello.
There you go. All right, so I'll give all of you a quick little overview of Zenput itself. So Zenput, for those of you who are not familiar, is an operational execution platform. We help companies both in the restaurant and retail space be able to execute on work better, both in the field and at the store level, across all sorts of different departments and initiatives, from food safety to marketing, merchandising, to general operational processes. The company, as I was mentioning, is 6 years old. We are currently in a little over 40,000 locations in 38 countries, everywhere from all around the United States of America to places like Botswana and Papua New Guinea and Saudi Arabia and Sweden and Norway and so on and so forth, right? And so we've been working with Cowabunga for the better part of this year. And Jay, I'd love for you to give us a little bit of background on Cowabunga Pizza and kind of the history of the company, maybe a little bit additionally yourself.
Yeah, so it was founded by Mike Orcutt, who was the president of all of Domino's Pizza, and he bought 9 stores in Atlanta in 1990, and now we've grown to 108 stores in 3 different states and 7 different markets. So using a platform like this has helped us, to where we need to go. But and growing, we're always looking to grow, but we don't know exactly how that'll be. But so that's just a little history about Domino's Pizza in Cowabunga.
Wonderful. Thanks for the intro, Jay. And you've been in Atlanta, it sounds like, for what, 30 years at this point, or close to it?
Yeah, I moved to Atlanta in '88, So yeah, and then I joined Cowabunga actually when I was 18 years old in 1990. Went off to the school, in and out of school, and then I moved over to the corporate side of the business. Did a lot of years there, and then found my way back to the franchise. Worked with a couple different franchisees, and then just landed back with Mike. So I've done a full circle.
Got it. Wonderful. It's a good place to be. I spent a little over 10 years in Atlanta, and still have my family, my extended family, still there, and a second office of ours is in Atlanta too. So let me slide into the agenda for today. We're going to cover do this in three parts, if you will. Initially, we recently conducted a survey around restaurant operations. And we're going to go through the process of actually talking about some of the findings that we came out of that survey and what we learned coming out of it. We're going to transition a little bit into Cowabunga's Pizza's experience, kind of implementing some of these things on the last mile with Zenput itself. And then at the end, we will finish up with Q&A that'll be opened up to the floor for Jay to answer questions around any of the operational things that they're kind of driving within their environment. So let me start off initially and first cover the actual operation survey that we ran. So we ran a survey in September of 2018, and there were roughly about 90 total responses that came through in that survey, right? So about 49% of this, 49% of the responses from an industry perspective were QSR, about 29% were fast casual, and 21% were casual dining. Right, and of those, as a mix, about 2/3 were franchise locations, and about 1/3 was corporate brands. And these were individuals spanning all sorts of different roles within the environment. Right, so these were in the C-suite, ops, regional management, and IT. Right, and it gave us sort of a good understanding of being able to get into and discuss some of the things that we're bumping into in the findings of the survey. So let's talk about maybe the starting point for it. As a whole, there's a sort of shared struggle amongst the operators, and that there's a relatively large gap between designing the procedures that you actually designed and then rolling it out, right? So as you can see from some of our findings on here, more than 70% of restaurant operators consistently reported that there were stores that were not correctly following operational procedures, and only 20% graded these rollouts as very effective in terms of store compliance, right? And lastly, about almost 75% said that over the next 12 months, a big priority is going to be turnaround and actually trying to improve the compliance within these operating procedures. We found this to be relatively in line, and kind of the anecdotally speaking, over the last few years of talking to a lot of folks in your positions and trying to better understand some of the challenges that are coming across it. And so we were wondering along those lines, which of those initiatives are actually falling flat? Are there sort of particular ones that are struggling a little bit? And so we came across a few areas that we thought were interesting enough to go back and share with you guys, right? 1 in 10. So the number of operators who said that more than 95% of their stores are in compliance by initiative was sort of broken down in these 4 parts, right? About 1 in 10 said that only 95% had their core operating procedures in place, right? These are the day-to-day things that you look at within your environment that are important to drive the brand and the business and of how you expect the brand standards to be executed. Interestingly enough, only 1 in 5 said that their brand standards were being followed. And on the food safety side, which as you all can imagine, is a hot topic at any point in time, was also only at a level of 1 in 4. Right. Last but not least, the initiatives for rollouts, LTOs, promotional pieces that we're doing was also just was a mere 1 in 4 individuals that responded along those lines. The common theme is that there's always struggle on this, right? You sit in an office, you design these ideas, you design these procedures, you expect a certain customer experience across the board, and then naturally, as you sort of come out into the field, you start to end up being surprised along those, right? And to try to find some ways to circumvent them, you're typically running around to 100, 200, 300 stores rather than having those locations come to you and let you know how they're doing, right? Now, why are these things falling flat, right? There's always kind of 2 reasons that we seem to find that are clear for us. One of those is around visibility. The other is around accountability, right? So only 1 in 3 respondents told us that they had very clear visibility into what the actual restaurants were being compliant of and how they were performing across the board, right? And on the flip side of it, the accountability side, being able to hold both your field and store level employees accountable for the work. Less than 1 in 4 reported that they were able to hold their employees accountable for their work, and only less than 5 were able to hold their store employees accountable for the things they need to get done, right? And so this is a constant struggle, right? With the turnover in the industry that we have, that in the industries that we work in, right, from 80 as low as 75% to as high as 150% turnover every year. The ability to start these procedures out quickly, the ability to drive them to the individual, the ability to turn around and make sure that folks are aware of what they need to get done, and then drive that accountability back to make sure that those standards and procedures are being followed is a constant struggle across the board, right? And we see that naturally. Probably the easiest way to pull some of this off is that mobile tech is usually the best way to bridge this gap, right? Your employees don't typically sit in front of a computer like some of us do back in a central office. They're not constantly in front of email. They're servicing customers. They're making food back in the kitchen environment, and so it's tough to constantly stay ahead of some of these things. But we do see that about 92% said they're using mobile somehow in their operations today or have plans to do so in the near future. The 8% that don't, I'm not sure exactly the direction they're trying to head, but we see that mobile's become ubiquitous both in the United States and outside the United States. And that 67%, this was a little bit surprising, 67% already have 1 tablet in place for back of house use in each store, with 21% reporting already having 2 tablets. We saw that maybe 3-4 years ago, the first set of brands were starting to buy tablets into their environments, and that now, as they've bought the first one, maybe they bought it initially for training, maybe they potentially engaged with us. As they're starting to use it more and more, they're finding a bit of a bottleneck, and so getting a second or third device in that environment, maybe one dedicated to certain procedures, makes life a little bit easier and makes folks a little bit more accountable and efficient along the way, right? So with that being said, would like to kind of transition a little bit more into a Q&A with Jay about Cowabunga and some of their kind of ability to execute better than the rest, if you will. So let me start off with. Sorry, let me come back there. Let me start off with the first question to you, Jay. So Cowabunga's secret ingredient to success has been exceptional customer service. With 100 restaurants in 3 states and over a couple thousand employees, how do you guys ensure consistently great customer experience at that last mile?
Well, the biggest thing is evaluations, weekly, monthly, making sure that the restaurants are clean because, customers, that's part of the customer experience. Making sure our marketing materials are up. So we use it for a wide variety of some are reoccurring tasks and some are a one-time task depending on the need. So that's what we've kind of used Zenput for to help with our overall customer experience.
Yeah, and you said you're doing some of these things weekly or monthly along the way. Is that right?
Correct.
Got it. And in terms of the hurdles themselves, maybe even this is potentially before being engaged with us, but what are the hurdles that you've had in the past for driving operational excellence and sort of creating this customer experience? What were the things that you struggled with or potentially spent the most of your time with on a regular basis in your position?
Well, making sure for me, it was always the regional directors or supervisors of 7, 8 stores. Trying to find out if they're actually in the stores. Are they leaving some kind of documentation when they leave? Good and bad at times, right? To help the operators, the day-to-day guys improve with constructive criticism and at sometimes, praise. But, with Zenput and the geocoding, that has helped. So they're actually at the store or at 5 miles away at their house, right? So we've been able to use that. And then, of course, with the pictures, too, to be able to see what they're talking about. I mean, if it's something that they're assigning to a general manager, they can take a picture of specifically what they're talking about, and then they can shoot a picture back on how it was fixed. So
got it. And did you have Along the way, when you started seeing kind of the the flood of photos coming into the system, I'm sure some of the stuff was happening outside over text message and whatnot. Were there any surprises that sort of caught your eye in the first maybe call it 60 or 90 days of this? Like, was everyone spot on at the store at all times like you expected, or were
Oh,
there?
never. I wish I could say that, but it is grueling to say the least for me at times that you're supposed to roll out a system a certain way, or the store's supposed to be set up a certain way, and it's still not. So that's what's kind of helped Zenput put everything, the one system in place in every store.
Yep, yep, that's good. And I'm curious, prior to adopting an ops execution solution like this, what were the biggest store execution issues that you were seeing, and what effects did those have on the actual business itself?
Well, I mean, before Zenput, it was just clipboards and pieces of paper and pens, right? And then they could do those almost anywhere. And then on top of the fact of, did they just do it before they sent them in? Was it lost? Did it get lost at the store? So there's a lot of mishandling of pieces of paper at times. So not having that and being able to start something, and even though you don't finish it at times, well, because something happens, an emergency happens, you can always go back to it or redo it again. And then at times, where people have forgotten to do stuff, this keeps them on task on what has to be done by, say, the end of the month. If it's an inventory check in a store or cash, the money they have on hand or deposits or whatever, it kind of guides them on what they need to do monthly, weekly, and sometimes daily.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking off that, if you push technology a little bit to the side, in your opinion, what is it that really drives a great customer experience, within a store or across multiple stores, in that matter?
Well, for us, it's always great product and great service, right? And great image. So, us being able to do our own, within Domino's Pizza, we have our own system of auditing our stores that the franchisor does on the franchisees. We take that same audit, put it in here, and we're able to check that all that stuff's taken care of, from food safety to good looking pizzas to, everything you have to do operationally can be in there to be able to see it.
Is it and have you found yourself sort of transitioning, as the business is continuing to grow, more from day-to-day execution with your sort of regional and district leaders, to more training and kind of coaching of how they need to be driving their individuals to create a better experience?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this isn't just a tool to come in and beat them up, right? It's a tool to coach them and show them where they've gotten better. And then it's also a tool to be able to have on hand. So if you haven't been in that store in a few days and you ask somebody to get something done and you come in, you can see exactly what you asked them to get done, and if they've met the deadline, right? So, the whole customer experience of making sure that all that stuff's taken care of. Because ultimately, why do we do all this? It's for the customer.
Right, right. And in terms of the process that you sort of went through to kind of identify gaps in the past, what was it that over maybe talk about it maybe over the last year and a half, what was it that you went through to sort of identify and assess potential solutions to get alignment on a path forward? What were you looking for to kind of close the gap on? What were the big things that you were saying, hey, I've got to find a way to fix this. If I don't find a way to fix this, it's going to the business will end up struggling.
Well, for me, it was the supervisors, regional directors, being in the stores more, being around their crews more, being there, teaching them, coaching them. And this is a great place to know that they were actually there. So every time they're in a store, they can log in and they can do a visit. Sometimes it's a lengthy visit, sometimes it's a short visit, but just to kind of let them know, give them immediate impact. And again, this can be used as documentation down the road to see, hey, look, every time I come in, you miss this or whatever it is. But that's how we kind of help drive that. I mean, we still have some, bottlenecks in it. I don't want people just walking around on their phone doing this. They still have to do kind of like a visit, check everything out, and then go back and start, clicking your yeses or nos or what they need, right?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. How do you determine that balance between tech versus investing in technology or in people, right? Because there's times where you don't invest enough in tech, people sort of get a little bit disenchanted. You overdo it in technology, and people just feel like they're constantly inside of the technology and no longer in there. How do you find that? How do you find the ability to strike that balance on a regular basis?
Well, I always tell them the most important thing is the customer and making the pizzas and delivering the pizzas safely on time. If they miss a task because they're doing that, I'm sometimes okay with that. It depends if they've missed it multiple times. And then that's where I've given some leniency where, hey, this is all due on Monday, but they may, get it all done on Tuesday or Wednesday. They can still see on their, handheld device that these tasks are still done. But, coaching and teaching and being there for the team is kind of more important than evaluations. The evaluations is that after you've taught them, do they have all the right systems in place?
Yep. No, that's that's further makes sense. When you guys sort of proceeding off of that a little bit, maybe it's tech, maybe just internal philosophical things. How quickly are you guys able to get your store and field teams aligned within new initiatives or new procedures, right? If you wake up on Monday morning, you've decided that you're going to change, I don't know, you're going to change the way a store opened. This is sort of a two-part question. One is culturally, one is how quick are you guys able to get everyone on the same page, and two is how did you set up the culture to be able to do that, right? Because there are times where there are folks that are able to roll things out quickly and make changes fast in an organization, and there are some organizations that they could take the better part of a year, to be able to move a pencil box over a couple inches.
Well, the big thing is checking on it. At the end of the week, I get all the reports, or at the end of it, when a task is due, I get reports on who did it on time and who still has left to do it. So I use that to evaluate the regional directors if they're completing all their tasks. I try to be smart with it too, because there are other things within our company that sometimes pull us away. But if it's, if they're getting 90% of their tasks done on a monthly basis, I'm pretty okay with that. And I know it's not 100%. I want it to be 100%. But if they have a good explanation, I was teaching class, I was doing some of these other things, I'm okay with that. I never want the Zenput, no offense, to run our business. I want it to help our business. So that's how I try to get them to use it.
Hey, listen, you hit on a very good point. Very good point with me. I completely agree with you. Software doesn't fix people. It's a tool like a hammer. You still got to pick it up at the end of the day, and you got to go nail some nails in place, right? So, it should never technology should never be the driver of it. It should just be another tool in your tool belt that allows you to better improve on things, right?
Well, and then I'm just going to add to that. The cool thing about this technology you guys have is if I'm in a store and I see something broken, I can go to the list of the broken stuff, right, and take a picture of it. It automatically goes to our office, the team that's responsible for fixing stuff. That's important too, because if we don't get that stuff fixed for the stores quickly, then those are the ones in the trenches doing making every pizza and taking care of the customers. So this helps get that done quicker without you having to stop what you're doing, send an email, copy it to certain people. Did the person get the email? Then that kind of task is already assigned to someone else, and that's kind of out of your hands at that point. So that helps too. That helps morale, because nobody likes to be working in a kitchen and something's broken or not working exactly the way it needs to.
Let me ask you this. Going back to this piece about the investing kind of back and forth into people and tech. You see a lot of news these days on automation, right? Robots are going to take over. Driverless cars are going to happen. Your pizzas are going to be delivered by drones. Well, actually, I think that's already happening, but at least with you guys in Australia. How do you think about automation in the future, and the potential impacts maybe to your business? Like, I mean, is this something that you think about on a regular basis of how to evolve, or maybe even more so, what's sort of your kind of crystal ball view of what that future may look like, call it maybe 10, 15 years from now?
I'm very open to any new technology that helps our stores and helps our people, and ultimately helps our customers. I don't think too much into it. There's a lot of people smarter than me in the Domino's system that comes up with that stuff. So all I do is embrace the change, because change is coming. It's always there. So it's always rocky at first, but when people embrace what's going to happen with this technology, I mean, I don't know if all that stuff's actually going to happen. Drones flying around, dropping pizzas from the sky. But hey, listen, I'm willing to try anything if it helps us do what we do. So again, I don't.
Muted. Unmuted.
There we go. Sorry, I unintentionally muted myself again. Yeah, look, I think there's some of these things come quickly, right, and some of them come take a lot longer to show up, right? So I imagine some of the stuff's going to be a ways away. But maybe that's a little bit more outside the store. But what about inside the store, right? What are the kind of trends that you're seeing both within Domino's that obviously that you can speak to without sharing too much, and the industry as a whole? What is that store of the future going to look like? I know you guys have obviously evolved from having stores that were primarily just delivery to now having the pizza theater from years ago, and they're wonderful stores to be in now. But what do you think about the store of the future? How do you see it sort of playing out within the environment? What are the things that you're maybe short-term most excited about, and what are the things you wish things would get solved for in the future, just more broadly? I think Jay. I think we might. Let me see. I think you might be on mute. I can't hear you at the moment. Give me a second. Um, hmm, uh,
Can you hear me?
There we go. There we go. I can hear you. Yep. Go
Okay,
ahead.
you can hear me.
Yep.
I was just saying that technology is probably above my, not technology, but what the store of the future is going to look like is probably above my pay grade. I don't know what it is. We just got done remodeling all our stores. So, I have no idea what it's going to look like.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
All I know is my pizzas will still be round. So that's all I care about.
If you, this is a bit of a sidebar on this, but I don't know if you've seen this. There's some rectangular pizzas in the San Francisco area. They're apparently also of Italian descent. They're called pinzas. If you're in San Francisco, I'll treat you to one. But that's probably the only anomaly. Otherwise, I agree with you. They should always be round. Otherwise.
Yeah.
So let me. We're getting close here to the bottom of the hour, and want to transition this a little bit more to Q&A. So Cassie, do you want to kind of take the lead in terms of transition us into kind of the Q&A section of the discussion?
Muted.
Had a few questions come through, and I invite everyone on the line to go ahead and add any questions they might have coming out of the presentation into the questions pane of GoToWebinar. But in the interim, we'll get started with the ones that have already come through. So Jay, you've hit on this a couple times in your presentation, but is there a specific area in your operations that you feel as though has really improved after launching Zenput?
Well, I would say that it's improved because I know where my field, the people that maybe don't work in the stores every day, the supervisors, I know that they're in their stores, and I know that the visits they're making, and us is just teaching how to communicate what they just did, good or bad. It can't be just a form you fill out and you leave. It has to be some follow-up. But for how I feel overall, I feel like it's done a good job to help us have cleaner stores and better running operations and beautiful looking pizzas. So for me, that's a huge win.
Great. All right, so we have another one here around the analytics that you get through the tool. So, having access to the data is great. What are you doing with it? And to layer on that, as you collect those, does that change the way that you coach your teams?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's so much data you can get from the visits, right? But it's hey, are we do what are our low hanging fruit we can get done quickly, so we go back and maybe we need to explain the why we're doing a system a certain way in a store because nobody's really doing it the correct way. Because some people want to know the why more than just telling them. But it's also helped us, for inventory purposes. If you have crucial items in your store, for us, it's in the pizza business, we wear those, items above the car tops on top of the car. We inventory those once a month to make sure that they're all there, right? So, because it's costly to continue to replace them. So we use that to help us also.
Great.
And one other thing I would say, I have different departments, like training and marketing and operations. So when they get their own data, they can use it any way they want. So that kind of helps them too. I don't even have to dive into the data. Somebody else can for their team.
That's great. So, do you have many changes to the procedures that you have in place? And if so, how do you effectively roll those out and update across all of your teams and stores?
Yeah, it's definitely changed some of our procedures because we found some stuff like we were doing that probably was just unnecessary. So we took that out, and then because it's just like everybody was a yes, and why continue to do it? Evaluate it if you're doing such a great job with it, consistently. It's also helped us, like I said earlier, see the low hanging fruit and what do we change.
Unmuted.
108 stores we can't change, on a dime. Can't make that switch on a dime. But you can see it gradually improving, and when you're talking about it and you're sending out their results, they can use it. And sometimes we use these, use the pictures that they send to be able to make a training, montage or however you want to do with these pictures. So when we're training new assistant managers, we can use real world pictures instead of just those stock photos you see on the internet sometimes.
Great. All right, so we had another one, and Vlad, some of these, feel free to jump in as well. So other than just tracking that employees were there, how does Zenput differ from just using your phone to take pictures and sending emails out?
Well, because Zenput there has specific questions, so you can have like when you go in the reporting, you can see how did everybody do with hand washing, right? What's our score? So we can have real life data numbers. So when we, talk about food safety, what % of the time are we washing our hands correctly? It's 100%, by the way, just kidding. But just use that as an example. So, that I think I don't know if I answered the question. Can you tell it to me one more time?
Of course. So, how does Zenput differ than knowing that people?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then the other problem is I don't have to send 5 different emails. I mean, I can have a marketing section in it. I can have a training section in it. Are these things being completed? And then instead of trying to write everything down that needs to go and where it needs and who needs the information, and then putting all those pictures in an email is just difficult at times. So only people that need to look at what they need to look at helps. Maybe the marketing team only wants to know what we got hanging up in the carryout lobby instead of and I don't have to look at that as closely.
Yeah, to sort of add some additional color to Jay's comment there. Effectively, the reason that works is because we're built for a multi-unit environment. We handle the different hierarchies of an organization. So as long as that hierarchy is set up initially, which it always is, as you sort of complete visits and do the work that's necessary, depending on the way those questions get answered, and the information is then routed to different individuals in the organization. So you can imagine that the larger your organization becomes, the more different people you have in different areas, right? If you've got 5 or 6 stores, naturally, the person running marketing might also be the person running maintenance. It's a bit of an extreme, but for the larger organizations, J size and above, typically a lot more people involved. And so, yeah, it's a lot easier to sort of start off in one place and go, great, now everyone's just automatically going to turn around and get this.
Yeah.
Great. Another one here is, does Zenput have an alert in the platform when items aren't being checked? And Jay, do you utilize that functionality?
One more time. Zenput checking on a go ahead.
Any sort of alerts as far as form submissions and work being done or not being done. So alerts in the platform when items are not being checked or properly answered.
Yes, we do have some alerts, again, for like food safety issues, temperatures and stuff. If something's out of that, it automatically triggers something to an email, or not an email, but another task to our team to, that's a red alert. You have to get that fixed. Let's Angie know in our office, hey, we got a walk-in down, wrong temp, and we can get somebody out there quickly. So those are the kind of alerts we use it for.
Got it. Okay. I think
anything around safety, if it is anything that makes somebody, safety, food safety, the safety of our employees, it automatically triggers something.
Got it. And there's one in here around a little bit more maybe on the rollout size. I think somebody had asked, I understand each store is different, but how quick is the rollout for a mid-size organization? Now, mid-size might differ a little bit, but I guess I'll sort of maybe speak to this a little bit broadly, and then maybe Jay, you can comment alongside with it. So rollouts are usually pretty straightforward for any sort of mobile technologies, right? You set up things in the back end, usually in a matter of a couple weeks, existing processes and things that you already have in place, so you're not reinventing the wheel. And then generally everyone else just turns around and downloads the application and starts using it. Most of the rollout is, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, in the change management portion of it, right? So how do you get people to adopt, and how do you make sure that everyone's staying on the same page, rather than so much the technology itself? That being said, Jay, I'll sort of turn that over to you, and you tell me if your mileage differs a little bit on that comment.
Well, the biggest thing we did for our rollout was we worked on doing the supervisors first, since we have 17 people above store. So we rolled it out to them first, got them used to the technology, and only now we're starting to go to the 108 stores to have tablets in their stores where they're able to do this. We just started testing that, but that's going to be a full rollout probably first quarter next year. And we've just taken it in stages, trying to get all 108 people from 3 different states in town costs a lot of money. So we'll go to different markets and use our trainers to help train them. And then it's just a work in progress, right? So, because I like the time functionality to if I'm in a store and I got to check temperatures 3 times a day, they can alert me, did somebody actually check the temperatures 3 times a day? So, but for us, the rollout, like I said, we just took it slow with the regional directors first, because I wanted to know that they're actually in the stores doing these evaluations, and then we're just starting to get to the store level.
Great. Another one here is, are you using Zenput for team member onboarding?
No, I don't believe so. Team member onboarding, we don't, but we do use it for, say, we're starting to use it. We're transitioning some of our HR stuff into it. So, for example, if somebody's vehicle inspection is past due, they can't clock in, they can pull up their Zenput. This is a thing we're going to be putting in for the stores. So then they can take all the pictures they need to of the car, make sure the car is okay, the driver signs it, the manager on duty signs it. It can go automatically to HR into their file, and you have pictures of their tires and everything else, and then we can unlock them, and then they can start driving.
Great.
All right. Just a couple more here. So one is, other than visits by supervisors and being able to hold them accountable, what other features have you been able to implement to improve communications and consistency amongst your team?
Again, the consistency comes with the visits, right? The different types of visits they have, and what one should take, shorter amount of length, and which one should be more detailed. And then it's just making sure that the systems are consistently the same way in every store. That's been a challenge at times, and this helps streamline that.
Great. All right, the last question we have here is, can this system be customized to various different systems needed?
I think that's like different.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do HR, you can do marketing. I mean, you guys, it's your platform. You could, maybe that's a better question for you guys, but absolutely, I feel you can.
Yeah, I mean that was part of the intent, right? The vision for the platform has always been kind of be the first application that one picks up when they get into work, right? So and being able to drive action off of that, right? So that means that it's there for marketing purposes, for operational purposes, for food safety purposes, even being able to capture any sort of incidents and being able to communicate those back up through the hierarchy as quickly as possible. But yeah, want to be as much as we can, trying to be centralized for as many different procedures as possible.
Great. Well, I think we're done with the Q&A portion. Vlad, Jay, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and thank you to everyone on the line. We'll be sharing the recording out so you guys can have access to that. And thanks for joining.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Jay, for taking the time.